In less than 2 weeks, most schools across Canada are scheduled to reopen. Students in Yukon have already resumed classwork. While reopening plans vary from province to province, the concerns don't. It's become a source of anxiety for parents across the country and a flashpoint for tensions between teachers' unions and some provincial governments. The big question? What will classroom life look like in our newly sanitized, physically distanced world? Today, the Prime Minister pledged $2 billion in back-to-school funding to help provinces and territories ensure that kids can safely return to class. There's an additional $112 million for schools in First Nations communities. Justin Trudeau says the goal is to ease parents' fears.
Our children must be safe in the classroom. That's non-negotiable. No parent should be losing sleep because they have to go back to work but aren't confident schools are properly prepared.
Critics say the money should have come weeks ago. Let's bring in our chief political correspondent, David Akin, with more on the funding announcement. David, will the cash get to schools in time?
No, it really won't, Robin. As you mentioned, schools already started in the Yukon. Tomorrow, school starts in Quebec in the French public system. Other provinces coming online as early as Monday next week. Between September 1st and the 15th, most schools will be online. So what the federal government has done here is they've set up what the government calls the Safe Return to Class Fund, which is, as you mentioned, a $2 billion pool of money. It's going to be distributed on a per capita basis to provincial and territorial governments. Almost no strings attached. Trudeau said the money can be used as provinces and school boards see fit. But these are funds that some had been pressing for since July.
Any announcement that comes today will be welcome, but when you show up 5 weeks late with your assignment, you don't expect an A.
Now, what do we expect the provinces to spend the money on? Well, probably on temporary items, additional school buses, more masks for kids, remote learning tools. But provinces are reluctant to spend this one-time boost from the feds on anything permanent. More teachers, for example, and that's because provinces would then be stuck with those higher costs permanently. Also, half of the money announced today will not be distributed until later this fall, and half will be distributed early in the new year. Robin?
Okay, given that fact, does this feel like a campaign announcement to you?
Yes, it did. The premiers did not ask for this funding. They first got wind of it on Monday and were officially told about it just yesterday when the PM held a First Minister's teleconference. Now, the premiers are happy to have the extra cash, don't get me wrong, but the idea of Ottawa spending money on education, something that is clearly a provincial responsibility, well, that idea came from Liberal MPs, or at least that's what the PM said. And so, yes, this felt very much like extra insurance, something Liberals can talk about on the campaign trail in the albeit unlikely event that the Trudeau Liberals lose a confidence vote this fall. Robin?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. The Ontario government has released its plan for dealing with COVID-19 outbreaks within schools. Anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 will be required to isolate for 14 days. If the virus was acquired outside of the school, the patient's entire cohort will likely be required to self-isolate as well. This includes groups that may be in contact while on the bus or during after-school programs. If there are 2 or more cases linked within a 14-day period, that would be considered an outbreak. School boards can then determine if the school needs to be closed.
We're not taking any chances. Our kids belong in school. They belong in the classroom with the guidance of their dedicated teachers and the benefit of being around kids their own age. And we are prepared to do whatever it takes to protect them.
Many of Canada's substitute teachers feel they've been left out of back-to-school plans. With COVID-19 expected to cause more illness and absences this year, substitutes may be needed more than ever before. But as Heather Yourex-West explains, there are also fears these teachers who work in different schools could help the virus spread.
School under COVID-19 is about to look very different. Inside this Calgary Catholic school, desks are spaced out, some sinks and fountains have been blocked off, and arrows show which way students can walk down the halls. The school district says substitute teachers will have new rules to follow as well.
We expect all of our guest teachers to keep a log of the schools that they attend, and we also have logs within each building.
Last spring, COVID-19 was able to spread across long-term care facilities because many healthcare workers worked at more than one location. Substitute teachers often work in multiple schools too.
Financially, I am incented to go to as many schools as I can if I want to make as much money as I can. That's the nature of the work.
There are few rules across the country limiting the number of schools teachers are able to work at. But in Toronto, Sarah Boomhauer plans to work at just one school this year. Still, she worries about what happens if she gets sick or is put under quarantine.
As an occasional teacher, if I don't work, I'm not paid. Now I'm quarantined 14 days unpaid. What's the impact on my community? What's the impact on my family, my individuality? I mean, it's really concerning.
That's a problem echoed by Alberta's teachers union. In a year where an outbreak of COVID-19 could increase the need for teacher coverage, there is little protection available for the substitute teachers themselves.
We've talked to boards and government about possibly putting substitutes on contracts so that they do have access to other leaves and benefits to protect them and their families as well.
Because as it stands now, Boomhauer says she just feels uneasy, with both her health and finances vulnerable as she heads back to class under COVID-19. Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.